The Nature of the Psyche by Jane Roberts. Chapter 10. And this is Seth speaking now. The brain is primarily an event-forming psychomechanism through which consciousness operates. Its propensity for event-forming is obvious even in young children. By obvious, I mean active, when fantasies occur involving activities far beyond the physical abilities that they have thus far developed. Children's dreams are more intense than those of adults because the brain is practicing its event-forming activities. These must be developed before certain physical faculties can be activated. Infants play in their dreams, performing physical actions beyond their physical capabilities, their present physical capabilities. While external stimuli are highly important, the inner stimuli of dream play are even more so. Children practicing using all their senses in play dreams, which then stimulate the senses themselves and actually help ensure their coordination. In your terms, the events are still plastic to young children in that they have not yet learned to apply your stringent structure. There is an interesting point connected with the necessity to coordinate the workings of the senses in that, before this process occurs, there is no rigid placement of events. The placement is acquired. The uncoordinated child's senses, for example, may actually hear words that will be spoken tomorrow while seeing the person who will speak them today. Focusing the senses in time and space is to some extent an acquired art then, one that is of course necessary for precise physical manipulation. But before that focusing occurs, children particularly in the dream state, enjoy an overall version of events that gradually becomes sharper and narrower in scope. A certain amount of leeway in space and time lingers, for even biologically, the child is innately equipped with a forevision that allows it some unconscious view of immediate events that forewarn, say, of danger. From this more plastic, looser experience, the child in dreams begins to choose more specific events, and in so doing, trains the senses themselves toward a more narrow sensitivity. In periods of play, the child actually often continues some games initiated quite naturally in the dream state. These include role-playing and other games that quite simply involve physical, muscular activity. All of this teaches a specification. In dreams, the mind is free to play with events and with their formation. The actualization of those events, however, requires certain practical circumstances. In play, the children try out events initiated in the dream state and judge these against the practical conditions. In such a way, the child juggles probabilities and also brings his physical structure precisely into line with a given niche of probability. Basically, in dreaming, the brain is not limited to physically encountered experience. Mentally, it can form an infinite number of events, and consciousness can take an infinite number of roles. The child may easily dream of being its own mother or father, sister or brother, the family dog, a fly, a soldier. In waking, the child will then try out those roles and quickly see that they do not fit physical conditions. Before a child has seen mountains, it can dream of them. A knowledge of the planet's environment is an unconscious portion of your heritage. You possess an unconscious environment, a given psychological world attuned to the physical one, and your learning takes place in it subjectively, even as objectively you learn exterior manipulation. The imagination is highly controlled with event forming. Children's imaginations prevent them from being too limited by their parents' world. Waking or dreaming, children pretend. In their pretending, they exercise their consciousness in a particularly advantageous way. While accepting a given reality for themselves, they nevertheless reserve the right, so to speak, to experiment with other secondary states of being. To some extent, they become what they are pretending to be, and in so doing, they also increase their own knowledge and experience. Left alone, children would learn how to cope with animals by pretending to be animals, for example. Through experiencing the animal's reaction, they would understand how to react themselves. In play, particularly, children try on any conceivable situation for size. In the dream state, adults and children alike do the same thing, and many dreams are indeed a kind of play. The brain itself is never satisfied with one version of an event, but will always use the imagination to form other versions of an activity quite as spontaneous as play. It also practices forming events as the muscles practice motion. The brain seeks the richest form of an event. I'm speaking specifically of the brain as separated from the mind, to emphasize the point that these abilities are of creaturehood. The brain's genius comes from the mind, which can be called the brain's biophysical counterpart. You have inner senses that roughly correlate with your physical ones. These, however, do not have to be trained to a particular space-time orientation. When children dream, they utilize these inner senses as adults. When children dream, they utilize these inner senses as adults do, and then, through dreaming, they learn to translate such material into the precise framework of the exterior senses. Children's games are always in the present, that is, they are immediately experienced through the play events, though the play events may involve the future or the past. The phrase "once upon a time" is strongly evocative and moving, even to adults, because children play with time in a way that adults have forgotten. If you want to sense the motion of your psyche, it is perhaps easiest to imagine a situation either in the past or in the future, for this automatically moves your mental sense perceptions in a new way. Children try to imagine what a world was like before they entered it. Do the same thing. The way you follow these directions can be illuminating, for the areas of activity you will choose will tell you something about the unique qualities of your own consciousness. Adult games deal largely with manipulation in space, while children's play, again, often involves variations in time. Look at a natural object, say a tree. If it is spring now, imagine that you will see it in the fall. After your time orientation in such other exercises, this will automatically allow you, now let me read that again, alter your time orientation in other such exercises. This will automatically allow you to break away from too narrow a focus. It will, to some extent, break apart the rigid interlocking of your perception into reality as you have learned how to perceive it. Children can play so vividly that they might, for example, imagine themselves parched under a desert sun, though they are in the middle of the coolest air-conditioned living room. They are, on the one hand, completely involved in their activity, and yet, on the other hand, They are quite aware of their normal environment. Yet the adult often fears that any such playful, unofficial alteration of consciousness is dangerous and becomes worried that the imagined situation will supersede the real one. Through training, many adults have been taught that the imagination itself is suspicious. Such attitudes not only drastically impede any artistic creativity, but the imaginative creativity necessary to deal with the nature of physical events themselves. Man's creative alertness, his precise sensual focus in space and time, and his ability to react quickly to events are, of course, all highly important characteristics. His imagination allowed him to develop the use of his tools and gave birth to his inventiveness. That imagination allows him to plan in the present for what might occur in the future. This means that to some extent the imagination must operate outside the senses' precise orientation. For that reason, it is most freely used in the dream state. Basically speaking, imagination cannot be tied to practicalities, for when it is, man has only physical feedback. If that were all, then there would be no inventions. There is always additional information available other than in the physical environment. These additional data come as a result of the brain's high play as it experiments in the formation of events, using the inner senses that are not structured in time or space. Put another way, just before you sleep, see yourself as you are, but living in a past or future century. Or simply pretend that you were born 10 or 20 years earlier or later. Done playfully, such exercises will allow you a good subjective feel for your own inner existence as it is apart from the time context. To encourage creativity, exert your imagination through breaking up your usual space-time focus. As you fall to sleep, imagine that you are in the same place, exactly in the same spot, but at some point in the distant past or future. What do you see? What do you hear? What is there? For another exercise, imagine that you are in another part of the world entirely, but in present time, and ask yourself the same questions. For variety, in your mind's eye, follow your own activities in the previous day. Place yourself a week ahead in time. Conduct your own variation of these exercises. What they will teach you cannot be explained, for they will provide a dimension of experience, a feeling about yourself that may make sense only to you. They will teach you to find your own sensations of yourself, as divorced from the official context of reality in which you usually perceive your being. Additionally, you might better be able to deal with current events, for your exercised imagination will bring information to you that will be increasingly available. Do not begin by using your imagination only to solve current problems, for again, you will tie your creativity to them and hamper it because of your beliefs about what is practical. Playfully done, these exercises will set into action other creative events. These will involve the utilization of some of your inner senses, for which you have no objective sense correlations. You will understand situations better in daily life because you will have activated inner abilities that allow you to subjectively perceive the reality of other people in a way that children do. There is an inner knack allowing for greater sensitivity to the feelings of others than you presently acknowledge. That knack will be activated again. Again, the powers of the brain come to mind. So while you learn to center your consciousness in your body, and necessarily so, nevertheless your inner perceptions roam a far greater range. Before sleep, then, imagine your consciousness traveling down a road or across the world. Whatever you want. Forget your body. Do not try to leave it for this exercise. Tell yourself that you are imaginatively traveling. If you have chosen a familiar destination, then imagine the houses you might pass. It is sometimes easier to choose an unfamiliar location, however, for then you're not tempted to test yourself as you go along by wondering whether or not the imagined scenes conform to your memory. To one extent or another, your consciousness will indeed be traveling. Again, a playful attitude is best. If you retain it and remember children's games, then the affair will be quite enjoyable. And even if you experience events that seem frightening, you will recognize them as belonging to the same category as the frightening events of a child's game. Children often scare themselves. A variety of reasons exist for such behavior. People often choose to watch horror films for the same reason. Usually the body and mind are bored and actually seek out dramatic stress. Under usual conditions, the body is restored, flushed out, so to speak, through the release of hormones that have been withheld, often through repressive habits. The body will seek its release, and so will the mind. Dreams or even daydreams of a frightening nature can fulfill that purpose. The mind's creative play often serves up symbolic events that result in therapeutic physical reactions and also function as post-dream suggestions that offer hints as to remedial action. I mention this here simply to point out the similarity between some dreams and some children's games, and to show that all dreams and all games are intimately involved with the creation and experience of events. And the event of this session is finished. Do you have any questions? Now, leading up to your questions, first of all, your memories, feelings, and emotions, while connected to the body and while leaving traces, are separate. It is as if the experiences of your life were captured on a film. In this case, the film would be the body tissue, the brain's tissue. The experiences themselves, however, would exist independently of the film, which, in any case, could not capture their entirety. In a manner of speaking, the activity of your brain adjusts the speed with which you, as a physical creature, perceive life's events. Theoretically, those events could be slowed down or run at a quicker pace. Again, in a manner of speaking, the sound, vision, dimensional solidarity, and so forth are dubbed in. The picture runs at the same speed, more or less. Physical senses chime in together to give you a dramatic, sensual chorus, each voice keeping perfect time with all the other sensual patterns, so that, as a rule, there is harmony and a sense of continuity, with no embarrassing lapse. The same applies to your thoughts, which, if you bother to listen, seems to come smoothly, one after another, more or less following the sequence of exterior activity. The brain, like the movie screen, gives you a physical picture and living stereo of the inner activities that nowhere themselves physically appear. Your brain gives you a handy and quite necessary reference system with which to conduct corporal life. It puts together for you in their proper sequences events that could be experienced in many other ways using other kinds of organization. The brain, of course, and other portions of the body tune into your planet and connect you with numberless time sequences, molecular, cellular, and so forth, so that they are synchronized with the world's events. The brain organizes activity and translates events, but it does not initiate them. Events have an electromagnetic reality that is then projected onto the brain for physical activation. Your instruments only pick up certain levels of the brain's activity. They do not perceive the mind's activity at all, except as it is imprinted onto the brain. Even dreams are so imprinted. When one portion or one half of the brain is activated, for example, the corresponding portion of the other half is also activated, but at levels scientists do not perceive. It is ridiculous to call one side or the other side of the brain dominant, for the full richness of the entire Earth experience requires utilization of both halves, as does dreaming. In dreaming, however, the full sense picture usually projected by the brain and reinforced by the bodily action is not necessary. Those dream experiences often seem out of joint or out of focus in the morning's hindsight or in retrospect, simply because they occur with a complexity that the brain could not handle in ordinary waking terms. The body obviously must react in your official present. Hence, the brain neatly keeps its physical time sequences with spaced neutral responses. The entire package of physical reality is dependent upon the senses' data being timed, synchronized, giving the body an opportunity for precise action. In dreams, the senses are not so restrained. Events from past and present and future can be safely experienced, as can events that would be termed probable from your usual viewpoint, since the body again is not required to act upon them. Because of the brain's necessary specification, large portions of your own greater reality cannot appear through its auspices. The brain might consider such extracurricular activity as background. The brain might consider such extracurricular activity as background noise or clutter that it could not decipher. It is the brain, then, as the brain's non-physical counterpart. Let me start the sentence again. Sorry. It is the mind, then, as the brain's non-physical counterpart that decides what data will activate the brain in that regard. The so-called ancient portions of the brain, among them the brainstem, the limbic system, contain the mind's memories. Generally speaking, this means important data to which, however, no conscious attention need be given. None could be given because the information deals with time scales that are more sophisticated portions of the brain, that the more sophisticated portions of the brain can no longer handle. Let me read that sentence again, as it seems important. None could be given because the information deals with time scales that the more sophisticated portions of the brain can no longer handle. The knowledge of the body's own biological probabilities takes place at those ancient levels. And at those levels, there is an activity that results in a cellular communication existing between all species. The brain has built-in powers of adaptation to an amazing degree, so that innately one portion can take over for any other portion and perform its activities as well as its own. Beliefs in what is possible and not possible often dull that facility, however, while the neural connections are specific and while learned biological behavior dominates. Basically, the portions of the brain are innately interchangeable, for they are directed by the mind's action. This is most difficult to explain, but the capacity for full conscious life is inherent in each portion of the body itself. Otherwise, in fact, its smooth synchronically. Oh, excuse me. Oh, my. Okay, this is difficult to explain, but the capacity for full conscious life is inherent in each portion of the body itself. Otherwise, in fact, its smooth synchronically would be impossible. This sentence doesn't make any sense to me. Let me read it again. Maybe it'll work out. Otherwise, in fact, its smooth synchronically would be impossible. I don't think he means that word, synchronically. That's not a word. And also, it certainly wouldn't be a noun. Oh well. The brain has abilities that you do not use consciously because your beliefs prevent you from initiating the proper neural habits. Certain portions of the brain seem dominant only because of those neural habits that are adopted at any given civilization or time. But other cultures in your past have experienced reality quite differently as a result of encouraging different neural patterns and putting experience together through other focuses. Dreaming, for example, can be brought into focus in a far sharper fashion, so that at least some of those experiences can be consciously utilized. When this happens, you are consciously taking advantage of experience that is physically and logically extracurricular. You are bringing into your consciousness traces of events that have not been registered in the same way that waking events are by the brain. The dream events are partially brain recorded, but the brain separates such experience from waking events. Dreams can provide you with experience that, in a manner of speaking at least, is not encountered in time. The dream itself is recorded by the brain's time sequences, but in the dream itself there is a duration of time that is timeless. Theoretically, certain dreams can give you a lifetime's experience to draw upon, though the dream itself can take less than an hour in your time. In a way, dreams are the invisible thickness of your normal consciousness. They involve both portions of the brain. Many dreams do activate the brain in a ghostly fashion, sparking responses that are not practically pertinent in ordinary terms. That is, they do not require direct action, but serve as anticipators of action, reminders to the brain to initiate certain actions in the future. Dreams are so many-leveled that a full discussion requires an almost impossible verbal expertise. For while dreams do not necessitate action on the part of the whole body, and while the brain does not register the entire dream, the dream does serve to activate biological action by releasing hormones, for example. There are also what I will call body dreams. No consciousness, to whatever degree, is fully manifested in matter. There is always constant communication between all portions of the body, but when the conscious mind is diverted, that activity often increases. Cellular consciousness at its own level then forms a body dream. These do not involve pictures or words, but are rather like the formations of electromagnetic intent, anticipating action to be taken, and these may then serve as initiators of therapeutic dreams, in which higher levels of consciousness are psychologically made aware of certain conditions. Many problems, however, are anticipated through body dreams and conditions cleared at that level alone. While consciousness enjoys its physical orientation, it is also too creative to confine its activities in one direction. Dreams provide consciousness with its own creative play. Therefore, when it need not be so practical or mundane, allowing it to use its innate characteristics more freely. Many people are aware of double or triple dreams when they seem to have 2 or 3 simultaneous dreams. Usually upon the point of awakening, such dreams suddenly telescope into one that is predominant, and with the others taking subordinate positions, though the dreamer is certain that in the moment before the dreams were equal in intensity. Such dreams are representative of the great creativity of consciousness and hint at its ability to carry on more than one line of experience at one time without losing track of itself. In physical waking life, you must do one thing or another, generally speaking. Obviously, I'm simplifying, since you can't eat an orange, watch television, scratch your foot, and yell at the dog, all more or less at the same time. You cannot, however, be in Boston and San Francisco at the same time, or be 21 years of age and 11 at the same time. In double dreams and triple dreams, consciousness shows its transparent, simultaneous nature. Several lines of dream experience can be encountered at the same time, each complete in itself, but when the dreamer wakes to the fact, the experience cannot be neurologically translated. So, one dream usually predominates with the others, more like ghost images. There are too many varieties of such dreams to discuss here, but they all involve consciousness dispersing, yet retaining its identity, consciousness making loops with itself. Such dreams involve other sequences, other than the ones with which you are familiar. They hint at the true dimensions of your consciousness that are usually unavailable to you, for you actually form your own historical world in the same manner, in that, above all the experiences, that one world is predominant and played on the screen of your brain. Take a very simple event, like eating an orange. Playfully imagine how that event is interpreted by the cells of your body. How is the orange perceived? It might be directly felt by the tip of your finger. But are the cells of your feet aware of it? Did the cells in your knee know that you were eating an orange? Take all the time you want with this. Then explore your own conscious sense, perceptions of the orange. Dwell on its taste, texture, odor, shape. Again, do this playfully and take your time. Then let your own associations flow in your mind. What does the orange remind you of? When did you first see or taste one? Have you ever seen oranges grow? Or orange blossoms? What does the color remind you of? Then pretend that you are having a dream that begins with the image of an orange. Follow the dream in your mind. Next, pretend that you are waking from the dream to realize that another dream was simultaneously occurring, and ask yourself quickly what that dream was. Followed in the same sequence given, the exercise will allow you to make loops with your own consciousness, so to speak, to catch it coming and going. And the last question, what else were you dreaming of, would bring an entirely new sequence of events and thoughts into your mind that were indeed happening at the same time as your daydream about the orange. The feel and practice of these exercises are their important points. The manipulation of a creative consciousness. You exist outside of your present context, but such statements are meaningless, practically speaking, unless you give yourself some freedom to experience events outside that rigid framework. These exercises alter your usual organizations and hence allow you to encounter experience in a fresher fashion. A double dream is like the double life lived by some people who have two families, one in each town, who seemingly manipulate separate series of events that other people would find most confusing. If the body can only follow certain events, still consciousness has inner depths of action that do not show on the surface line of the experience. Double dreams are clues to such activity. While each person generally follows a given strand of consciousness and identifies with it as myself, there are other alternate lines beneath the surface. They are also quite as legitimately the same identity, but they are not focused upon because the body must have one clear, direct mode of action. These strands are like double dreams that continue. They also serve as a framework to the recognized self. In periods of stress or challenge, the recognized self may sense these other strains of consciousness and realize that a fuller experience is possible, a greater psychological thickness. On some occasions, in the dream state, the recognized self may then enlarge its perception enough to take advantage of these other portions of its own identity. Double or triple dreams may represent such encounters at times. Consciousness always seeks the richest, most creative form, while ever maintaining its own integrity. The imagination, playing, the arts, and dreaming allow it to enrich its activities by providing feedback other than that received in the physical environment itself. In their play, children often imaginatively interchange their sexes. The young selfhood is freer in its identification and as yet has not been taught to identify its own personality with its sex exclusively. In the dreams of children, this same activity continues. so that the boy may have many dream experiences as a girl, and the girl as a boy. More than this, however, in children's dreams, as in their play activity, age variances are also frequent. The young child, dreaming of its own future counterpart, for example, attains a kind of psychological projection into the future of its world. Adults censor many of their own dreams so that the frequent changes in sexual orientation are not remembered. Play then at another game. Pretend that you are of the opposite sex. Do this after an encounter in which the conventions of sex have played a part. Ask yourself, how many of your current beliefs would be different if your sex was? If you are a parent, imagine that you are your mate, and in that role, imaginatively consider your children. Your beliefs, your dreams, color your memory and interpretation of them, so that at the point of waking with magnificent psychological duplicity, you often make last-minute adjustments that bring your dreams more in line with your conscious expectations. The sexual symbols usually attached to dream images are highly simplistic. For example, they program you to interpret your dreams in a given manner. You do have a dream memory as a species with certain natural symbols. These are individually experienced with great variations. The studies done on men and women dreamers are already prejudiced, however, both by the investigators and by the dreamers themselves. Men remember manly dreams, generally speaking now, while women, in the same manner, remember dreams that they believe suit their sex according to their beliefs. People often program their waking memory in quite the same fashion. The psyche, again, not only has one sexual identification, but it is the larger psychic and psychological bank of potentials from which all gradations of sexuality emerge. It is not asexual, and yet it is the combination of those richest ingredients considered to be male and female. The human personality is therefore endowed, sexually and psychologically, with the freedom from strict sexual orientation. This has contributed to the survival of the species by not separating any of its mental or psychological abilities into two opposite camps. Except for the physical processes of reproduction, the species is free to arrange its psychological characteristics in whatever fashion it chooses. There is no inner programming that says otherwise. In dreams, the psychological complexity is more apparent. Because of programming, many people refrain from natural reactions of a most harmless nature. These are often given expression in the dream state. Those dreams, however, are precisely the ones least remembered. The censoring is so habitual. The man's aggressive tendencies, often taken as basic characteristics of the species itself, are a case in point. This is an exaggerated, learned, aggressive response, not natural in those terms in your species or as interpreted in any other species. This artificial aggressiveness has nothing to do either basically with the struggle for survival. It is the direct result of the fact that the male has been taught to deny the existence within himself of certain basic emotions. This means that he denies a certain portion of his own humanity, and then is forced to overreact in expressing those emotions left open to him. The reasons for such a lopsided focus has been discussed at various times in my works. The male, however, chose to take upon himself a kind of specialization of consciousness that, carried too far, leads to a hard over-objectivity. Only in dreams, in your time, in your society, is the male free to cry unabashedly, to admit any kind of dependency, and only at certain occasions, and usually in relative privacy, is he allowed to express feelings of love. His rage turns outward as aggression. It is the highest idiocy, however, to project that artificial aggression outward upon the animal kingdom in general. Such beliefs invisibly affect all of your studies, and worse, they help you misread the activity in nature itself. Those who imagine they look upon nature with the most objective of eyes are those whose subjective beliefs blind them most of all, for they cannot see through their own misinterpretations. It has been said that statistics can be made to say two things at once, both contradictory. So the facts of nature can be read in completely different fashions, as they are put together with the organizational abilities of the mind operating through the brain's beliefs. The exterior core of dreams is also blemished to that extent, but the inner core of dreams provides a constant new influx of material, feedback, and insight from the psyche, so that the personality is not at the mercy of its exterior experience only, not confined to environmental feedback only, but ever provided with fresh intuitive data and direction. Even if such dreams are not recalled, they circulate through the psychological system, so to speak. They are responsible for the inventiveness and creativity of the species, even bringing new comprehensions that can be used to bear upon life of the physical world. Again, as in your terms, the species has a physical past, so it has a psychological past. No experiences are ever lost. The most private event is still written in the mass psyche of the species. I am explaining this for now in terms of past, present, and future. You can only understand some concepts that are given in that fashion. Taking that for granted, then, you are each born with the conscious knowledge of what has come before. Your brain is far from an empty slate, waiting for the first imprint of experience. It is already equipped with complete equations telling you who you are and where you have come from. Nor do you wipe that slate clean, symbolically speaking, before you write your life upon it. Instead, you draw upon what has gone before, the experiences of your ancestors, back in your terms now, through time immemorial. The individual is born equipped with his humanness, with certain propensities and leanings toward development. He knows what human voices sound like. Even before his ear physically hears those sounds, he is born wanting to form civilizations, as, for example, beavers want to form dams. Children's dreams activate inner psychological mechanisms, and at a time when their age makes extensive physical knowledge of the world impossible, in dreams they are given information regarding that environment. Physical feedback is, of course, necessary for development, and a child deprived of it will not fully mature. Yet, the development of dreams follows inner patterns that activate the child's growth and stimulate its development. There are even key dreams in infancy that serve to trigger necessary hormonal functioning. The child crawls and walks in dreams before those acts are physically executed. The dreams serving as impetus for muscular coordination and development. Language is practiced by infants in the dream state, and it is indeed that mental practice that results in children speaking sentences far more quickly than otherwise would seem possible. The dream world then develops faster than physical experience. For some time, the child is more secure there. Without dreaming, there would be no learning, there would be no memory. Events are processed in dreams, put in the necessary perspective, sorted and arranged. This is done when the conscious mind is separated from direct involvement with physical events. Dreams serve to dull the impact of the day's events just past, while the meaning of those activities sifts through the various levels of the personality, settling into compartments of intent and belief. Often the true impact of an event does not occur until it has been interpreted or re-experienced through a dream. Because dreams follow paths of association, they break through time barriers, allowing the individual to mix, match, and compare events from different periods of his life. All this is done somewhat in the same way that a child plays, through the formation of creative dream dramas in which the individual is free to play a million different roles and examine the nature of probable events from the standpoint of a game. In play, children adopt certain rules and conditions for a time. The child can stop at any time. Innumerable play events can occur with varying intensity, yet generally speaking, the results cease when the game is over. The child plays at being an adult, and is a child again when his parents call so. The effects of the game are not long-lasting. Still, they are important as part of a child's daily life, and they affect the way he or she relates to others. So in dreams, the events have effects only while dreaming. They do not practically intrude into the waking hours. The attacking bear vanishes when you open your eyes. It does not physically chase you around the bedroom. The great versatility of the species in its reaction to events is highly dependent upon this kind of dreaming capacity. The species tries out its probable reactions to probable events in the dream state, and hence is better prepared for action in the future. To some extent, dreams are participated in by cellular consciousness also, for the cells have an equal interest in the individual's psychic and bodily functions, body events. In a way, dreams are, of course, composite behavior, mental and psychic games that suit the purposes of mind and body alike. Feedback from the physical environment may trigger an alarming dream that causes the individual to awaken. Certain chemicals may affect dreaming by altering the cell's reality. Many sleeping pills are detrimental in that they inhibit the body's natural response to its environment, while an individual is sleeping, and deaden the intimate relationship between the dreaming mind and the sleeping mind. Because you have very limited ideas of what logic is, it seems to you that the dreaming self is not critical or logical. Yet it works with amazing discrimination, sifting data, sending some to certain portions of the body, and structuring memory. Sleeping pills also impede the critical functions of dreams that are so often overlooked. The facts are that dreams involve high acts of creativity. These are not only intuitively based, but formed with a logic far surpassing your ideas of that quality. These creative acts are then fitted together through associative processes that come together most precisely to form the dream events. It should certainly be obvious that dreams are not passive events. Some rival physical events in intensity and even effect. They involve quite active coordination of the part of the mind and body, and they bring to the individual experience otherwise unattainable. Small amounts of ordinary stimulators, such as coffee or tea, taken before bed when you are already sleepy, have a beneficial effect in stimulating dream activity and aiding dream recall. Too large a serving, of course, could simply awaken you, but small amounts, taken if you are already drowsy, allow you to take your conscious mind into the dream state more readily, where it can act as an observer. A very small amount of alcohol can also serve. Anything that suppresses activity will also suppress your dream. As is known, anyone deprived of sufficient dreaming will most likely begin to hallucinate while in a waking state, for too much experience has built up that needs processing. There are many secondary hormonal activities that take place in the dream state, and at no other time. Even cellular growth and vitalization are accelerated while the body sleeps. And this concludes chapter 10.